The red-eye flight from Phoenix touched down just after midnight, and all I could think about was crawling into bed next to Martha. 3 days of negotiations had left me drained, but the deal was done. As my Uber pulled up our winding driveway, something felt wrong. A sound drifted through the humid Texas air, faint but unmistakable. My blood turned to ice. That was Martha's voice coming from our garage. I fumbled for my house keys, my 65-year-old hands suddenly unsteady. The garage door was padlocked shut with a chain I'd never seen before. I sprinted back to my truck, my heart hammering against my ribs as I grabbed the bolt cutters from my toolbox. The padlock snapped under the pressure and I yanked the door open. What I saw made my knees buckle. Martha was huddled in the far corner of our 3-car garage, surrounded by empty water bottles and crumpled granola bar wrappers. Her normally pristine silver hair was matted with dirt and sweat. Dark bruises covered her arms, and her wrists bore angry red marks that looked like rope burns. She'd fashioned a makeshift bed from old moving blankets, and in the corner sat a 5-gallon bucket that made my stomach turn when I realized its purpose. "Igor," she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "You're home." I dropped to my knees beside her, gathering her fragile 72-year-old frame into my arms. She felt so small, so breakable. Her clothes were torn, and she smelled of fear and desperation. My wife, my partner of 43 years, had been living like a caged animal in our own garage. "Who did this to you?" I demanded, though my voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "I'll call the police right now." Martha's whole body began to shake. Fresh tears carved paths down her dirt-stained cheeks as she gripped my shirt with surprising strength. "Bradley," she whispered. "Our son did this." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Bradley, our eldest, the successful financial advisor with the beautiful house in Memorial, the father of our 2 grandchildren, it had to be a mistake. Martha must be confused, maybe dehydrated. "Honey, that can't be right," I said gently. "Bradley lives in Houston. He couldn't. He was here," Martha insisted, her voice growing stronger with each word. "4 days ago. You were unconscious, Igor. He put something in your coffee. When you collapsed, he told me you'd had a stroke, that he was taking you to the hospital. But he didn't. He did something to make you forget." My mind reeled as I tried to process her words. I remembered having coffee with Bradley in our kitchen discussing his kids' college funds. Then, nothing until I was on a plane to Phoenix for a meeting I couldn't quite remember scheduling. "Why?" I asked, though part of me already feared the answer. "Why would Bradley do this?" Martha's eyes met mine, and in them I saw a pain deeper than any physical wound. "The money, Igor. He wants everything we've built. The construction company, the rental properties, our savings. He said he needed us to sign papers to transfer everything to him immediately. When we refused..." She broke off, unable to continue. I held her tighter, my mind racing. Bradley had always been ambitious, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. "There's more," Martha whispered. "He's in trouble, Igor. Bad trouble. I heard him on the phone with someone threatening him. Something about debts and consequences if he doesn't pay by the end of the month." I helped Martha to her feet, noticing how she winced with every movement. "We're getting you to a hospital," I said firmly. "Then we're calling the police." "No." Martha's grip tightened on my arm. "He said if we go to the police, if we tell anyone, he'll make sure we're declared incompetent. He has papers, Igor. Documents that make us look senile. He's been planning this." As I half-carried Martha into the house, I noticed things I'd missed in my panic. Security cameras that had been repositioned, new locks on interior doors, my office door standing ajar when I always kept it locked. In the kitchen, Martha collapsed into a chair while I got her water and searched for something she could eat. The refrigerator was nearly empty, unusual, since Martha always kept it well stocked. I found some crackers and cheese watching as she ate, slowly, mechanically. "How long were you in there?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. 3 days, she said between bites. He locked me in after you were gone. Said he'd be back once he'd handled everything. Igor, I think he was coming back to finish what he started. I pulled out my phone to check my recent calls and texts. Sure enough, there were messages I didn't remember sending confirming meetings in Phoenix, telling Martha I'd be gone for a few days. All sent after my coffee with Bradley. We need help, I said, thinking fast. But we need to be smart about this. Bradley's not some stranger. He knows us, knows our routines, our contacts. We can't just react. We need to plan. Martha nodded, some of her old strength returning. He made one mistake, she said quietly. He didn't know about the security app on my phone. The one Sarah helped me install last Christmas. It's been recording everything uploading to the cloud. Sarah, our daughter, had insisted on the app after Martha had a fall last year. Bradley had mocked it as unnecessary, I remembered now. Said we were too old for technology we didn't understand. Where's your phone? I asked. Hidden in the garage, behind the old paint cans on the shelf. I managed to hide it before he tied my hands. I retrieved the phone, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the footage. There it was clear as day. Bradley doctoring my coffee while I was in the bathroom. Me collapsing at the kitchen table, him dragging my unconscious body to the guest room, then returning for Martha. But it was the audio that chilled me to the bone. Bradley's voice, cold and businesslike, talking to someone on speaker. I'll have the signatures within the week. My parents are old, confused. No one will question it when they sign over power of attorney. And if they don't cooperate, well, accidents happen to elderly people all the time. I looked at Martha, seeing my own horror reflected in her eyes. Our son, the boy we'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, had become a monster. And we'd been blind to it. What do we do? Martha asked. And for the first time in our marriage, I heard fear in her voice. We fight back. I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. But not the way he expects. Bradley thinks we're just two old fools he can push around. He's about to learn exactly how wrong he is. As I helped Martha upstairs to clean up and rest, my mind was already working. 40 years in the construction business had taught me patience, planning, and most importantly, how to build something that would last. Bradley thought he could tear down everything we'd built in 43 years of marriage. He was about to discover that his old man still had a few tricks left. And this time I wouldn't be drinking any coffee he offered. The next morning arrived with a sense of unreality. Martha slept fitfully beside me, occasionally crying out in her sleep. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, my mind churning through 40 years of memories, searching for signs I'd missed. After ensuring Martha was stable, I drove her to Methodist Hospital, concocting a story about a fall in the garage to explain her injuries. Dr. Patricia Helms, who'd been our physician for 2 decades, wasn't buying it. Igor, these bruises aren't consistent with a fall, she said quietly, pulling me aside while nurses tended to Martha. And these ligature marks on her wrists. I'm mandated to report suspected abuse. I made a quick decision to trust her. Patricia, I need you to run a complete toxicology panel on both of us. Check for everything, especially heavy metals, and document everything meticulously. This is about abuse, but not what you think. Her eyes narrowed. Igor, if someone's hurting you and Martha, just run the tests, I said. Please, I'll explain everything once we have proof. While Martha underwent x-rays and blood work, I stepped outside to make some calls. First to my office, where my assistant Donna confirmed what I'd suspected. Mr. Volkov, you did call about the Phoenix trip, but you sounded strange, confused. I actually called Mrs. Martha to check if you were feeling all right. What did she say? Bradley answered your home phone. Said you were both napping and not to worry, that he was taking care of everything. My blood ran cold. Bradley had been intercepting calls, managing our lives like we were already incompetent. I thanked Donna and asked her to quietly gather all records of unusual requests or changes from the past 6 months. My next call was to our family lawyer, Harold Brennan. His secretary put me through immediately. Igor Bradley mentioned you'd been under the weather. How are you feeling? The casual familiarity in his voice set off alarm bells. When did you speak with Bradley? Oh, several times over the past few weeks. He's been quite concerned about you and Martha. In fact, he asked me to prepare some documents regarding your estate planning. Just precautionary, of course. What kind of documents? Power of attorney, medical directives, that sort of thing? Bradley said you'd been showing signs of confusion for getting appointments. He wanted to be prepared in case decisions needed to be made on your behalf. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Harold, I need to see everything Bradley's discussed with you. Every document, every email, every note from your conversations. Igor, I'm not sure that's appropriate. Bradley indicated you might become paranoid, resist help. It's quite common with cognitive decline. Harold, I said, my voice deadly calm. I've been your client for 25 years. I'm standing in a hospital where my wife is being treated for injuries sustained during 3 days of imprisonment in our garage. Now you can gather those documents for me, or I can have the State Bar of Texas help me gather them. Your choice. The silence on the other end stretched for several beats. I'll have everything messengered to your home this afternoon, he finally said. I ended the call and immediately contacted Rachel Morrison, a former prosecutor who'd helped me with a construction liability case years ago. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. Back in Martha's room, Dr. Helms was reviewing test results with a puzzled expression. Igor, these results are unusual. You both show elevated levels of mercury in your blood. Not acute poisoning levels, but consistent with chronic exposure over time. Have you been eating a lot of fish, working with old thermometers? Martha and I exchanged glances. How long would someone need to be exposed to show these levels? I asked. Months, possibly years of low-level exposure. The concerning thing is the pattern. It's almost like someone was deliberately keeping the levels just below acute toxicity, high enough to cause symptoms like confusion, memory problems, tremors, but not enough to trigger immediate medical intervention. What kind of symptoms exactly? Martha asked, her voice steady despite everything. Dr. Helms pulled up a chart on her tablet. Cognitive impairment, mood changes, muscle weakness, peripheral neuropathy. In elderly patients, it's often mistaken for dementia or normal aging. I thought back to the past year. The times I'd forgotten meetings when Martha had mixed up her grandchildren's names, our uncharacteristic emotional outbursts at family gatherings. Bradley had been there to smooth things over, each time the concerned son making excuses for his aging parents. Doctor, we need complete documentation of everything, and I need you to contact these symptoms specifically to mercury poisoning, not age-related decline. After arranging for Martha's overnight observation and hiring a private nurse to ensure her safety, I drove home with a detour past Bradley's office building. His Mercedes sat in its usual spot in the executive parking. Through the glass lobby, I could see him glad-handing clients every inch the successful financial advisor. At home, I found the package from Harold Brennan's office. As I spread the documents across my dining room table, the scope of Bradley's betrayal became clear. Powers of attorney with signature lines ready for our names. Medical directives giving Bradley complete control. Asset transfer documents moving our entire estate into a trust with Bradley as sole trustee. But it was the supporting documentation that made my blood boil. Detailed notes of our supposed decline. October 15th, father forgot grandson's birthday. November 3rd, mother attempted to pay bills twice. December 10th, parents confused about holiday plans showed signs of agitation. Each incident had been carefully documented, witnessed, twisted to support a narrative of incompetence. I recognized some of the dates as family dinners at Bradley's home. The Sunday gatherings we'd treasured where Jennifer would cook elaborate meals, and the grandchildren would show us their school projects. A note in Bradley's handwriting made my hands shake. Continue mercury protocol. Increased dose if resistance to signing continues. V confirms cleanup crew available if needed. V, who was V and what cleanup crew? I spent the next hours in my home office, a room Bradley apparently hadn't thought to search thoroughly. From a hidden safe behind a false panel I'd installed during construction, I retrieved documents Bradley didn't know existed. Account numbers for offshore holdings, contacts from my years of working with federal construction projects, and most importantly, an encrypted hard drive containing 40 years of business records. You see, Bradley had made a crucial mistake. He assumed his old construction worker father was exactly what he appeared, a blue-collar success story who'd made good money but remained unsophisticated. He didn't know about the federal contracts, the work I'd done building secure facilities, the connections I'd maintained with people who specialized in making problems disappear legally and permanently. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your son owes us $800,000. Payment due in 10 days, or we collect from whatever's available. This includes family. I screenshot the message before it disappeared, self-deleting like something from a spy movie. Bradley wasn't just in debt. He was in debt to people who didn't accept bankruptcy as an answer. The doorbell rang, and I checked the security monitor to see Rachel Morrison on my porch. I let her in, noting how she cataloged everything with her prosecutor's eye. "Igor, you look like hell," she said bluntly. "Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." For the next 2 hours, I laid out everything. The imprisonment, the poisoning, the forged documents, the threats. Rachel took notes in shorthand, occasionally asking pointed questions. "This is criminal conspiracy, attempted murder, elder abuse fraud, and that's just for starters," she said when I finished. But Bradley's been smart. Everything's designed to look like concerned son managing declining parents. We need more than your word, and Martha's. "What about the security footage?" "Good start, but a skilled defense attorney could argue manipulation deep fakes. We need multiple forms of corroborating evidence, and we need to know who else is involved. This V person, the lawyer's complicity, anyone else in your family who might be compromised." "You think there are others?" Rachel's expression was grim. "Igor, this level of planning doesn't happen in isolation. Bradley's got help, and I'd bet my license it goes beyond Harold Brennan. We need to find out how deep this goes before we make any moves." As Rachel prepared to leave, she turned back with one final thought. "Igor, whatever you do, don't confront Bradley directly. Don't change your routines. Let him think his plan is working. The best trap is one the prey walks into willingly." After she left, I sat alone in my office, surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal. Somewhere in Houston, Bradley was probably congratulating himself on outmaneuvering his doddering old parents. He had no idea that the confused old man he'd dismissed was about to become his worst nightmare. But first, I needed to know everything. Every debt, every accomplice, every detail of his plan. Because when I finally moved against my son, I would leave him nothing. No escape routes, no excuses, no mercy. He'd tried to bury us. He was about to learn what happened when you failed to finish the job. Sleep eluded me entirely that night. While Martha recovered in the hospital under private guard, I sat in my study mapping out Bradley's network on a legal pad. Every connection, every timeline, every financial thread needed to be documented. By dawn, I'd filled 3 notebooks, and my coffee pot was empty. My first call at 7 sharp was to Tommy Chen, a private investigator who'd helped me with employee theft 15 years ago. Despite the early hour, he answered on the second ring. "Igor Volkov," he said warmly. "Been too long. What's the construction king need with a washed-up detective?" "Nothing washed up about you, Tommy. I need discreet surveillance and a deep dive into someone's finances. Complete discretion required." 24/7 surveillance runs about $1,500 a day plus expenses. Financial forensics depends on how deep. Who's the target? "My son." The pause stretched several seconds. "That's rough, Igor. You sure about this?" "He tried to kill my wife, I'm sure." "Jesus, when do I start?" "Now." I'll wire $50,000 to your account within the hour. I need everything where he goes, who he meets every phone call if possible. And Tommy, he's connected to some dangerous people. Watch your back." After arranging the payment, I drove to visit Martha. She was sitting up in bed, color returned to her cheeks, steel back in her spine. The private nurse I'd hired, a former Army medic named Gloria, gave us privacy. "How are you feeling?" I asked, taking her hand. "Like I've aged 10 years in 3 days, she admitted. "But clearer than I've felt in months. That mercury. Igor, do you realize what this means? Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, our own son was slowly killing us." "I know, and it goes deeper than we thought." I showed her the threatening text about Bradley's debts. "He owes $800,000 to someone who doesn't take IOUs. Martha's face hardened. "The Torelli family, has to be. Remember when Bradley was handling their company's portfolio, he was so proud of landing such a big client." "Of course." Vincent Torelli ran the largest underground gambling operation in Texas, hidden behind a legitimate real estate empire. Bradley would have seen easy money, not realizing he was swimming with sharks. "I've hired investigators," I told her. "We're going to document everything before we make our move." "What about Susan and Michael? Our other children?" The thought had been plaguing me. "I don't know yet if they're involved or just oblivious. We have to assume everyone's compromised until proven otherwise." Martha squeezed my hand. "I recorded something else on my phone. Before Bradley locked me in the garage, I heard him on a call. He mentioned insurance policies. Life insurance on both of us." My blood chilled. "How much?" $5 million each. He was confirming the beneficiaries were changed to him alone." So that was the end game. If we wouldn't sign over our assets, he'd collect insurance money instead. The mercury poisoning would have looked like age-related decline. 2 confused elderly people, a tragic accident, a grieving son collecting policies he'd thoughtfully arranged. "We need to leave the hospital," I decided. "It's too public, too many variables. I'm taking you somewhere safe." Within 2 hours, I'd moved Martha to a corporate apartment I maintained downtown for out-of-town clients. Only my most trusted foreman, Pete Kowalski, knew about it. I stocked it with supplies and installed new locks and cameras. "Stay here," I told her. "Gloria will stay with you. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't use your regular phone. I'll check in every few hours." "Where are you going?" "To play the part of a confused old man who needs his son's help." I drove home and waited. Sure enough, Bradley's Mercedes pulled into my driveway at noon. He had his own key, letting himself in like he owned the place already. "Nyah! Dad," he called out. "You hear Donna said you called in sick to the office." I shuffled out of my study, making sure to hold the doorframe like I needed support. "Bradley, what are you doing here?" His face shifted into a mask of concern. "Just checking on you. Where's Mom?" "Hospital," I said, letting confusion creep into my voice. "She fell, I think. Or maybe that was yesterday. I can't seem to remember, right?" Bradley's eyes lit up with satisfaction. "Dad, this is what I've been worried about. You're getting confused more often. Maybe it's time we talked about getting you and Mom some help." "Help?" I blinked owlishly at him. "Professional care. Someone to manage your medications, your appointments, your finances too. That's got to be overwhelming at your age." I nodded slowly, like the idea was just penetrating my foggy brain. "That might be good. It's all so complicated now. The bank called about some transfers I don't remember making." Bradley's mask slipped for just a second. "Transfers. Something about moving money to new accounts. Must have been Martha. You know how she gets with the computer." I watched him relax. He thought I was talking about his attempts to access our accounts, not my defensive moves. "Dad, why don't we go to my office? I have some papers that could help simplify everything. Give me authority to handle these confusing financial matters for you." "Would you?" I asked, letting gratitude color my voice. "You're such a good son, Bradley. I don't know what we'd do without you." The words tasted like ash, but Bradley preened. "Of course, Dad. Family takes care of family. Let me just grab some things from your office, then we'll go. I watched him head for my study, knowing he'd find nothing. The real documents were in my truck, the encrypted drives with him. Let him rifle through old invoices and tax returns. While he was busy, I made a confused show of looking for my keys, then my wallet, buying time while memorizing everything. Bradley had lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loose. His hands shook slightly, and I noticed him checking his phone obsessively. Rudyard! Retititus. He emerged with a folder of meaningless papers. I should leave a note for Martha. I'll call the hospital, let them know where you are. Come on. In his car, I played up the confusion, asking where we were going twice, commenting on buildings I'd never seen before on routes I'd driven for 40 years. Bradley ate it up, even patting my hand condescendingly. Don't worry, Dad. Soon everything will be taken care of. At his office, I met with 2 associates who presented themselves as elder care specialists. They spoke slowly, simply, as if I were a child. I nodded along, signed where they pointed with a shaky hand, knowing every document was worthless without Martha's signature and proper witnesses. The most revealing moment came when Bradley stepped out to take a call. Through the glass door, I watched him pace, gesturing frantically. Even without hearing, I could read the desperation in his body language. Whatever deadline he faced was approaching fast. When we returned to my house, I fumbled with the door like I'd forgotten how keys worked. Bradley took them impatiently, letting us in. Time for the next phase. Bradley, I'm worried about your mother, I said, letting tears well up. What if she's sicker than they're saying? What if something happens to her? Dad. Bradley said, his voice honey-sweet poison. Mom's going to be fine, but you're right to think about the future. Actually, I've taken the liberty of arranging some insurance policies, just to make sure you're both taken care of. Insurance. I blinked at him. Life insurance? Nothing morbid, just practical. At your age, it's important to have affairs in order. That's smart, I agreed. You always were the smart one. How much are the policies for? Enough to cover any medical expenses, funeral costs, that sort of thing, he said vaguely. Could I see them? I'd like to understand what I'm paying for. His jaw tightened. They're at my office. Besides, I'm handling the payments. You don't need to worry about any of it. Of course he was. Can't have the victims knowing they're worth 10 million dead. After Bradley left, promising to check on me tomorrow, I waited exactly 1 hour before transforming back into myself. The confused old man act dropped away as I called Tommy Chen. Your boy's in deep, Tommy reported. Met with 3 different Torelli associates today. From what I could pick up with the parabolic mic, he owes $800K to their sportsbook, another $400 to their poker room. They gave him 30 days to pay 6 weeks ago. So deadline's in 10 days. Less. Vincent Torelli himself is flying in from Vegas next week. Word is he wants to handle this personally. Your son promised collateral he doesn't have yet. My estate. Bingo. He's been selling them on inheriting everything within days. If he doesn't deliver... Tommy didn't need to finish. The Torellis didn't accept failure. There's more, Tommy continued. Bradley's been embezzling from his clients, moving money from escrow accounts to cover gambling markers. We're talking about $2 million plus in stolen funds. Can you document it? Already am. His assistant seems to think I'm a federal auditor. Amazing what people will share when they think their boss is under investigation. I hung up and made another call, this one to a number I hadn't dialed in 5 years. The voice that answered brought back memories of concrete pours at classified facilities. Mike Brennan. Mike, it's Igor Volkov. Igor, I'll be damned. Heard you retired to count your money. Not quite. Mike, I need a favor. That job we did in El Paso, the witness protection facility. You still have contacts in the Marshal Service. Might do. What's this about? My son's mixed up with the Torelli family. It's complicated, but I need someone who can flip a mobster if the opportunity arises. Jesus, Igor, your son... He tried to kill his mother. I'm well past sentiment. Give me 24 hours. I'll make some calls. As night fell, I sat in my empty house planning war against my own blood. Somewhere across the city, Bradley was probably spinning new lies, forging new documents, planning new ways to steal what we'd spent a lifetime building. He thought his parents were sheep ready for slaughter. Tomorrow he'd learn differently. The confused old man he'd dismissed was gone. In his place stood someone Bradley had never met, the Igor Volkov, who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd survived job site accidents and union strikes and federal investigations. The wolf was awake now, and he was hungry. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Susan, our middle child, called while I was reviewing surveillance reports from Tommy Chen. "Dad, I'm worried about you," she began without preamble. "Bradley says you've been showing signs of dementia. He wants to call a family meeting to discuss care options." I weighed my options carefully. Susan had always been the moral compass of our family, a pediatric nurse who dedicated her life to helping others. But she also trusted her older brother implicitly. "Susan, when did Bradley tell you this?" "He's been mentioning it for months. Little things at first, then more serious concerns. Dad, he showed me videos from Sunday dinners where you seemed confused, agitated." "Videos? Of course he'd been recording us." "I'd like to see those videos," I said mildly. "Dad, that's not the point. The point is you and Mom need help. Bradley's already lined up specialists." "Susan," I interrupted, "what would you say if I told you my recent blood work showed elevated mercury levels?" Silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "Mercury poisoning. Chronic exposure over months. Your mother shows the same levels. Causes confusion, memory issues, mood changes. Mimics dementia quite effectively." "Dad, that's paranoid thinking. That's exactly what Bradley said you might say." "Check my medical records. Dr. Helms at Methodist has the test results. Ask yourself why Bradley hasn't mentioned that your mother is in the hospital with injuries consistent with being held against her will." "Mom's in the hospital." Real alarm crept into her voice. "Bradley said she was at a spa retreat." My first crack in Bradley's wall of lies. "Room 412, Methodist Hospital. Under 24-hour private nursing care for her protection. Visit her, Susan. Ask her what happened. Then decide who's really confused here." After hanging up, I returned to Tommy's reports. Bradley's movements over the past 48 hours painted a desperate picture. 3 visits to different banks, likely trying to secure loans against his expected inheritance. A meeting at a pawn shop where he'd sold his Rolex and Jennifer's jewelry. 2 hours at the Torelli compound on the north side. My phone buzzed with a new message from Tommy. "Your boy just met with someone interesting. Sending photos." The images showed Bradley in a parking garage with Harold Brennan, our family lawyer, and another man I didn't recognize. Tall, thin, expensive suit briefcase that screamed attorney. Tommy's next text explained, "Third man is David Morse, specializes in mental competency hearings. Looks like they're fast-tracking." So Bradley was accelerating his timeline. The Torelli deadline must have him panicked. Time to add more pressure. I called Pete Kowalski, my foreman for 30 years. "Pete, I need you to spread some rumors at the supplier warehouses. Word is Igor Volkov is thinking about selling the company, considering offers." "Boss, you're not really..." "Just rumors, Pete. Make sure they reach the right ears." Within hours, my phone started ringing. Competitors, suppliers, all wanting to know if Volkov Construction was really for sale. I let them all go to voicemail, knowing Bradley would hear about it soon enough. Next, I visited my banker, not the local branch Bradley knew about, but the private wealth management office downtown. Richard Steinberg had handled my larger accounts for 2 decades. "Igor, good to see you. How can I help?" "I need to make some changes to my accounts. Add some restrictions." "What kind of restrictions?" "Any transfer over 10,000 requires verbal confirmation from both Martha and myself, in person or via video call with biometric verification. Any changes to beneficiaries trigger a 72-hour cooling period with notification to our attorney of record." Richard raised an eyebrow. "That's quite stringent. May I ask why?" Family member with a gambling problem trying to access funds. Better safe than sorry. Ah, more common than you'd think, unfortunately. I'll implement these immediately. Anything else? Yes. If anyone claims power of attorney over our accounts, I want immediate notification to these 3 numbers. I handed him a card with my burner phone. Tommy Chen's number and Rachel Morrison's law office. With financial defenses in place, I drove to the FBI field office. My contact from the construction days, Special Agent Janet Rodriguez, agreed to meet off the record. "Igor, you look terrible," she said over coffee at a nearby diner. "Thanks. Listen, Janet, hypothetically, if someone had evidence of embezzlement, racketeering, and attempted murder involving the Torelli crime family, would that be of interest?" She set down her cup carefully. "Hypothetically, we've been trying to nail Vincent Torelli for 15 years. Solid evidence of his operations would be very interesting." "Why? My son owes them over $1 million. He's trying to pay it with money he doesn't have yet. Mine." "Christ. Igor, I'm sorry, but if you're asking what I think you're asking, I'm not wearing a wire to entrap my son. But if evidence of crimes happened to surface during my efforts to protect myself and my wife, and that evidence happened to find its way to you..." Janet smiled grimly. "Hypothetically, that would be perfectly legal. And hypothetically, we might already have someone inside the Torelli organization who could corroborate such evidence." "How interesting, hypothetically." As I left the diner, Susan called again. Her voice shook with rage. "I just left the hospital. Mom told me everything. How could Bradley do this? How could he..." "Your brother's in deep trouble, Susan. Gambling debts to dangerous people. He's desperate enough to kill for our money." "What do we do?" "For now, nothing. Act normal around Bradley. Can you do that?" "I want to claw his eyes out." "I know, but we need him to think his plan is working. Where's Michael in all this?" "Our youngest a software engineer in Austin. Bradley's been feeding him the same lies about your dementia. But Michael's been suspicious. Said Bradley was pushing too hard for power of attorney." "Good. Michael had always been the analytical one." "I'll call him. Susan, I need you to do something for me. Bradley's been recording our Sunday dinners. Can you get copies of those videos?" "Why?" "Because I want to see what he's been showing people, and because videos can be analyzed for tampering." "You think he edited them?" "I think a desperate man with technical knowledge might create evidence to support his narrative. Find out." That evening, I returned to the safe house to check on Martha. She was pacing the living room like a caged tiger, Gloria watching from the kitchen. 43 years of marriage, and this is the first secret apartment you've shown me," she said by way of greeting. "I was saving it for a special occasion." Despite everything, she smiled. "Our son trying to murder us qualifies, I suppose. What have you learned?" I filled her in on the day's developments. Her face hardened with each revelation. $10 million in life insurance," she repeated. "He literally put a price on our heads." "The policies won't pay out under suspicious circumstances. He needed us to appear senile, first make our deaths look natural." "All those Sunday dinners," Martha said quietly. "Jennifer cooking while Bradley poisoned us. Does she know?" "I don't think so. Tommy's surveillance shows her living normally. Shopping, taking the kids to school. No signs of unusual stress or knowledge." "Those poor children. When this comes out..." "We'll protect them as much as we can. They're not responsible for their father's crimes." Martha took my hand. "How does this end, Igor? Our son, our firstborn, how did we get here?" "I don't know. But I know how it doesn't end. With us dead and Bradley spending blood money, whatever happens next, we survive. He made sure of that when he locked you in that garage." My burner phone rang. "Tommy Chen. Got something interesting," he said. "Bradley just left a medical supply company. Purchased items with cash. Want to guess what?" "Tell me." "Insulin syringes, potassium chloride, and succinylcholine. That's a paralytic drug. Combine those right, you get what looks like a heart attack." My blood went cold. Bradley had moved from slow poisoning to active murder planning. "Where is he now?" "Heading home. But get this, he told Jennifer he'd be at a client dinner tonight. He's lying to everyone." "Keep on him. If he heads toward downtown or the hospital, call immediately." I hung up and looked at Martha. "Pack a bag. We're leaving the city tonight." "Igor. He just bought the drugs to kill us. We're past subtle poisoning. He's desperate enough to act directly now." As Martha gathered essentials, I made rapid calls. Pete would handle the business. Susan would watch Michael. Rachel Morrison would file protective orders in the morning. But tonight, we'd disappear. Let Bradley search for his victims. Let him feel the panic of losing control. Because tomorrow the trap would snap shut. The hunter was about to become the hunted. And I'd spent 40 years learning that the best foundations were built slowly, carefully, one piece at a time. Bradley's world was about to collapse, and I'd be there to watch every brick fall. 1 week later, I stood in the living room of our family home, watching caterers arrange tables for what Bradley believed would be his triumph. He'd been frantically searching for us for 7 days, his calls progressing from concerned to angry to desperate. Martha and I had watched from our hotel suite in Austin, letting him spiral. Now, it was time for the finale. I'd called the family gathering myself, telling Bradley I'd been confused that Martha and I had taken an impromptu trip to clear our heads. His relief had been palpable over the phone. "Dad, you can't just disappear like that." He'd scolded mask firmly back in place. "We were worried sick." "I know, son. That's why I want the whole family together, to discuss our future." The doorbell rang, and I welcomed Susan and her family. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "The videos were edited, every single one." Michael found the originals on Bradley's cloud storage. Michael arrived next with his wife and infant daughter. He pressed a flash drive into my palm. "Everything's on there. Bradley's financial records, the edited videos, even emails with Harold Brennan planning your incompetency hearing." "How did you—" "I'm not just a software engineer, Dad. I specialize in cybersecurity. Bradley should have remembered that before keeping evidence on hackable systems." Jennifer arrived with my grandchildren looking haggard. Bradley had told her I'd been having episodes, preparing her for my apparent breakdown tonight. The children ran to hug me, and my heart broke, thinking of what they'd endure. Bradley entered last briefcase in hand, Harold Brennan at his side. A third man I recognized from surveillance photos, David Morse, the competency specialist. Bradley had brought his whole team to what he thought would be the signing of our lives away. "Dad," Bradley said warmly, though his eyes scanned the room nervously. "You look well. Where's Mom?" Martha entered from the kitchen, Gloria at her side. Bradley's face went white. He'd never seen Gloria before, didn't know she was an armed security specialist, not just a nurse. "Hello, Bradley," Martha said calmly. "You look tired. Not sleeping well." "Mom, Where have you been?" "Recovering. 3 days locked in a garage takes time to process." The room went silent. Jennifer gasped. "What, Martha? What are you talking about?" "Should we discuss it over dinner?" I suggested mildly. "Everyone sit. We have much to talk about." The meal began with strained conversation. Bradley kept checking his phone, presumably for updates from the Torellis. I'd made sure he knew about my supposed plans to sell the company, adding another layer of pressure. Halfway through dinner, I stood tapping my glass. "I have some announcements. First, I want to thank everyone for coming. Family is everything, isn't it, Bradley?" He nodded warily. "That's why I was so surprised to learn about the mercury poisoning." I continued conversationally. "Chronic exposure over 18 months. Martha and I both have extensive medical documentation. Fascinating how it mimics dementia symptoms." Harold Brennan shifted uncomfortably. David Morse was frozen fork halfway to his mouth. "Dad," Bradley started, but I held up a hand. "I'm not finished. You see, I've been confused lately, but not from age or illness. I've been confused how a son could poison his parents, lock his mother in a garage, forge documents, plan murders." "These are serious accusations," Harold interjected. "Igor, you're clearly having an episode." Am I? I pulled out my phone. Let's see what's clear. The first video played on our smart TV. Security footage of Bradley doctoring my coffee. Gasps around the table. The children were quickly ushered to another room by Susan. That's fake, Bradley stammered. Like the videos you edited of our Sunday dinners? Michael asked. I have the originals and the edited versions. Want to see the comparison? The next video showed Bradley dragging my unconscious body. Then, Martha being forced into the garage. Jennifer began crying. Bradley, tell me this isn't real, she pleaded. But Bradley was focused on his phone, typing frantically, no doubt alerting his Torelli contacts that things were going sideways. There's more, I said. Tommy. Tommy Chen entered from the study where he'd been waiting. Bradley Volkoff, you're being served with a restraining order. You're also under investigation for embezzlement of client funds totaling $2.3 million. You can't prove anything, Bradley snarled, mask finally dropping completely. Actually, Rachel Morrison said, entering with a folder. We can. Your assistant was very helpful. Seems she kept records of every illegal transfer, every forged document. She thought she was protecting herself. Turns out she was documenting your crimes. Harold Brennan stood to leave, but found Pete Kowalski blocking the door. Sit down, Harold, I said. We're not done. The insurance policies, Martha said, speaking directly to Jennifer. $10 million each on our lives, purchased 6 months ago without our knowledge. Jennifer looked like she might faint. Bradley, our finances. You said the losses were from bad investments. Shut up, Bradley snapped at her. Just shut up. The Torellis, I added. Over $1 million in gambling debts, due when Bradley tomorrow. His phone rang. Vincent Torelli's name flashed on the screen. Bradley's hands shook as he declined the call. You should answer, I suggested. Tell Vincent his money's not coming, that the FBI has been monitoring his communications for 6 months, that his inside man Tony Benedetto flipped last week. Bradley went gray. How do I know about Tony, about the Thursday poker games in the warehouse off Highway 6, about the sports book running through the Torelli Waste Management front, because while you were plotting to kill us, I was building a federal case. The doorbell rang. Susan answered, returning with FBI agents Rodriguez and Kemp. Arfo. Bradley Volkoff. Agent Rodriguez announced, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, fraud, and racketeering. As they cuffed him, Bradley looked at me with pure hatred. You senile old bastard, you ruined everything. No, son. You ruined everything the moment you decided money was worth more than family. Harold Brennan tried to slip out during the arrest, but found Agent Kemp waiting. Mr. Brennan, we have questions about your involvement in attempted elder fraud. David Morse, the competency specialist, raised his hands. I had no knowledge of any criminal activity. I was hired to perform legitimate evaluations. Based on falsified evidence, Michael interrupted. I have your emails discussing how to interpret the mercury poisoning symptoms as dementia. As the FBI led Bradley out, he turned back one final time. The Torellis will kill you for this. All of you. Actually, Agent Rodriguez smiled. Vincent Torelli was arrested an hour ago. Your father's cooperation led to the largest organized crime bust in Texas history. The Torelli family is finished. After they left, silence descended. Jennifer sat in shock, our grandchildren's voices drifting from the other room. Susan held her hand, while Michael poured brandy with shaking hands. I'm sorry, Jennifer whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. We know, Martha said gently. You're as much a victim as we are. What happens now? Jennifer asked. Now we rebuild, I said. Bradley made his choices, but his children are innocent. You're all family, and family takes care of each other. The house, Jennifer started. Bradley mortgaged everything. We're going to lose it all. No, I said firmly. You're not. Consider Bradley's share of our estate advanced to you and the children. The house is safe. Igor, she protested after what he did. What he did was unforgivable, but punishing you and the children for his crimes would make us no better than him." As the evening wound down, family members departed quietly. Susan hugged us both fiercely. Michael promised to visit more often. Jennifer left with the children, who didn't yet understand why their daddy had left with the police. Alone, finally, Martha and I sat on our porch, looking at the stars. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Turning in our son, no. He crossed lines that can't be uncrossed. But I regret not seeing it sooner, not recognizing what he'd become. The gambling changed him," Martha said, "or maybe revealed who he always was." Maybe. But somewhere in that federal prison cell tonight is the little boy who used to help me build birdhouses, who cried when his goldfish died. I'll mourn that boy even as I feel no sympathy for the man he became. We sat in comfortable silence, two survivors of an unthinkable betrayal. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, trials, media attention. But tonight, we were just an old married couple sitting on our porch, grateful to be alive. The wolf had done what needed doing. Now it was time to rest. The federal courthouse in downtown Houston buzzed with media attention 6 months after Bradley's arrest. I adjusted my tie in the bathroom mirror, noting how much older I looked since this ordeal began. Martha waited outside, flanked by Susan and Michael. We'd become reluctant celebrities, the elderly couple who'd survived their own son's murder plot and brought down a crime family. "Mr. Volkov," Rachel Morrison approached all business. "The prosecutor wants to prep you one more time before testimony." "I know what to say, Rachel." "It's not about that. Bradley's lawyer is pushing the brain tumor angle hard. They found it during his medical evaluation at the detention center." I'd heard about the tumor 3 months ago, a glioblastoma pressing on his frontal lobe, affecting impulse control and decision-making. His defense team painted it as the reason for everything, a medical excuse for monstrous behavior. "A tumor didn't make him poison us slowly for 18 months, I said flatly. "That took planning?" In the courtroom, I saw Bradley for the first time since his arrest. Prison had aged him 20 years. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by federal custody orange. He'd lost more weight, his face gaunt, eyes hollow. When our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't expected: recognition of what he'd done. The prosecutor, Janet Walsh, called me to the stand. For 3 hours, I detailed everything: the poisoning, the imprisonment, the financial fraud. Bradley's attorney, Marcus Webb, tried to shake my testimony during cross-examination. "Mr. Volkov, were you aware your son had a brain tumor affecting his judgment?" "I became aware after his arrest." This tumor, according to 3 neurologists, significantly impaired his ability to make rational decisions. Doesn't that change your perspective? "My perspective is based on 18 months of calculated poisoning, on my wife locked in a garage for 3 days, on detailed plans to murder us for insurance money. If the tumor affected his judgment, it did so very selectively." "You sound angry, Mr. Volkov." "I am angry. My son tried to kill us. A medical condition might explain it, but it doesn't excuse it." The most dramatic moment came when Vincent Torelli took the stand as a prosecution witness. The former crime boss, now in protective custody, looked diminished in his cheap suit and gray complexion. "Mr. Volkov's son came to us 2 years ago," Torelli testified. "Wanted to invest his client's money in our operations. When that went bad, he kept doubling down. By the end, he owed us $1.2 million. "What was the arrangement for payment?" Walsh asked. "He promised his parents' estate. Said they were old, wouldn't last long. When we pushed for specifics, he said he was working on it, making them appear incompetent, getting control of their assets." "Did he mention other plans?" Torelli shifted uncomfortably. "He asked about hiring someone, to make problems go away permanently. We don't do that kind of work, but he was insistent. Said if we didn't help, he'd handle it himself." Bradley's attorney tried damage control. "Mr. Torelli, you're testifying in exchange for a reduced sentence, correct?" "Yeah." "So you have motivation to say whatever the prosecution wants." "Listen, counselor." Torelli leaned forward. "I ran numbers, loaned some enforcement. but I never murdered nobody's parents. Your client wanted us to kill 2 old people for money. Even criminals got limits. The trial continued for 2 weeks. Jennifer testified about Bradley's increasingly erratic behavior, the lies about money, the personality changes she'd attributed to stress. Susan presented the edited videos and their analysis. Michael detailed the cyber evidence of Bradley's schemes. The most heartbreaking testimony came from Dr. Patricia Helms. She explained the effects of chronic mercury poisoning, how it had stolen months of our lives, damaged our health permanently. Martha now had peripheral neuropathy. I suffered from persistent tremors. We'd aged years in months, all because our son saw us as obstacles to wealth. Bradley's defense presented their case, the tumor, the gambling addiction as a medical condition, temporary insanity. They brought in expert witnesses who testified about frontal lobe damage and impulse control. They painted Bradley as a victim of his own biology. When Bradley himself took the stand, the courtroom was packed. He looked at us as he was sworn in, and I saw tears in his eyes. Bradley, his attorney began gently, tell us about when the gambling started. 3 years ago, a client invited me to a private game. I won big that first night, $5,000 in 3 hours. It felt electric, like I'd found the answer to everything. How did it progress? Slowly at first. Weekend games, then during the week, then online betting. Within a year, I was gambling daily, lying to Jennifer, stealing from client accounts to cover losses. When did you start planning to harm your parents? Bradley's voice broke. I don't remember planning it. I remember desperate thoughts, needing money, knowing they had it. The tumor. They say it affected my judgment, my empathy, made me see solutions that weren't solutions at all. Do you remember poisoning them? Like a dream. Like watching someone else do it. I knew it was wrong, but the part of me that should have stopped it wasn't working. On cross-examination, Walsh was brutal. Mr. Volkov, you say you don't remember planning, but investigators found 18 months of detailed notes in your handwriting. Can you explain that? I must have written them. You documented their symptoms, adjusted mercury doses, researched inheritance law. That's not impulse, Mr. Volkov. That's strategy. The tumor was discovered 6 months ago. Your planning started 2 years ago. Were you having tumor symptoms then? I don't know. Walsh presented evidence of Bradley's normal brain scans from an executive physical 2 years prior. No tumor visible. It had likely developed during his crime spree, not before. You locked your mother in a garage for 3 days, Walsh continued. Was that the tumor? I wasn't thinking clearly. Clearly enough to disable security cameras, to chain the door, to leave just enough food and water to keep her alive but suffering. Bradley broke down completely. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I don't know who that person was. It doesn't feel like me. But it was you, wasn't it? Every decision, every action. You chose this path. Yes, he whispered. Yes, I did. During closing arguments, Bradley's attorney made an impassioned plea for understanding. Mental illness addiction, a perfect storm of factors creating temporary madness. He asked for treatment, not punishment. Walsh countered with facts. Premeditation over 18 months, multiple victims, sophisticated planning inconsistent with impaired judgment. She asked for the maximum sentence. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, Bradley stood on shaking legs. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. 37 charges in total. Bradley collapsed into his chair while Jennifer sobbed quietly in the gallery. At sentencing 3 weeks later, Judge Patricia Hawkins allowed victim impact statements. Martha spoke first, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. Bradley was my firstborn. I loved him from his first breath. That love hasn't died despite everything. But love doesn't mean accepting the unacceptable. He made choices that nearly killed us, that destroyed our family. Medical conditions might explain those choices, but they don't erase the consequences. I spoke next. I built my business on strong foundations. I tried to build my family the same way. Somewhere that foundation cracked with Bradley. Maybe it was the tumor, maybe the gambling, maybe something deeper we'll never understand. But when someone tries to murder you, reasons matter less than survival. I'll always love my son. I'll also always remember the 3 days my wife spent locked in our garage, believing she would die there. Even Harold Brennan spoke, now serving his own sentence for fraud. I betrayed clients who trusted me for 30 years. Bradley Volkov convinced me his parents were incompetent, needed protecting. I chose to believe it because it was profitable. I'm responsible for my choices, as is he for his. Bradley spoke last. The tumor had been removed successfully by all accounts. He looked clearer, more present than he had in years. I remember everything now, he began. Every pill I slipped into their food, every lie I told, every document I forged. The tumor explained some of it, but not all. Not the premeditation, not the choice to value money over family. He looked directly at us. Mom, Dad, I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask only that you know the son you raised did exist. He got lost, buried under sickness and greed and desperation. Prison gives me time to find him again, if he's still in there. To my children, he continued, Jennifer, bringing them forward. Daddy did bad things, unforgivable things. But I love you and I'm getting help. Maybe someday. He couldn't finish. Judge Hawkins delivered the sentence 25 years federal prison with possibility of parole in 15. Mandatory mental health treatment. Restitution to all victims. Bradley would be 53 when eligible for release. As court officers led him away, Bradley looked back one more time. I met his eyes and nodded once. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. He was still my son. That would never change. Neither would his crimes. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. We pushed through to our car where Gloria waited to drive us home. The cameras captured an elderly couple who'd survived the unthinkable, but at tremendous cost. It's over, Martha said as we pulled away. The trial's over, I corrected. The rest, that'll take time. We drove home in silence, each lost in thoughts of the son we'd loved, the man he'd become, and the long road ahead for everyone he'd damaged in his desperate grab for wealth that was never really about money at all. 2 years passed before I walked through the gates of the Federal Correctional Institution in Beaumont, Texas. The morning was crisp for October, and I pulled my jacket tighter as I approached the visitor entrance. Martha had chosen not to come. Some wounds, she said, needed more time. Bradley looked healthier than I'd ever seen him in adult life. Prison had structured his days, removed the temptations that had destroyed him. The gaunt desperation was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in years, clarity. Dad, he said simply as he sat across from me at the metal table. Thank you for coming. Your letters were persuasive. Over 18 months, Bradley had written us weekly, not asking for forgiveness or early release, just sharing his journey. Therapy sessions uncovering childhood anxieties about success. Addiction counseling revealing the dopamine chase that gambling provided. Teaching literacy to fellow inmates, finding purpose in service. I wanted to tell you in person, Bradley said. The information I provided about Harold's network, it helped recover $14 million in stolen assets from elderly victims across Texas. I heard. 14 families got their life savings back because I kept records of his other schemes. It doesn't undo what I did to you and Mom, but maybe it balances the scales slightly. We talked for an hour about small things. Jennifer's new job, the grandchildren's school progress, Susan's promotion. Normal family conversations in an abnormal setting. As our time ended, Bradley reached into his pocket. I made this in the wood shop, he said, sliding a small carved box across the table. Remember when we used to build birdhouses? I opened it to find a miniature recreation of our family home, perfect in every detail. On the bottom carved carefully, I'm sorry. It's beautiful, I said, meaning it. Dad, I need to tell you something. The Torelli trial starts next month. I'm testifying about everything. Names, dates, operations. My lawyer says it might add years to my sentence retaliation from their people inside. But it's right. Why tell me? Because if something happens to me, I want you to know I finally did one right thing. That the son you raised found his way back, even if too late. I stood to leave, pocketing the carved house. At the door, I turned back. Bradley, your mother keeps your baby pictures on the mantel, next to Susan's and Michael's. She says that's her son in those photos and she's waiting for him to come home. His composure finally cracked. Tell her I'm trying. Outside, Gloria waited by the car. How was it? Harder and easier than expected. I showed her the carved house. 23 years until he's eligible for release. He'll be 61. I'll be 88 if I'm still here. You'll be here, Gloria said firmly. Martha needs you. The grandkids need you. Hell, I need the employment. We drove back to Houston, where life had found new rhythms. The construction business thrived under Pete's management with my oversight. Susan visited weekly with her family. Michael had moved back from Austin wanting to be closer. Jennifer brought the grandchildren for Sunday dinners, new memories slowly overwriting poisoned ones. The mercury damage proved partially reversible with treatment. Martha's neuropathy improved, though she still had bad days. My tremors came and went manageable with medication. We'd survived scarred but intact. Our estate restructuring created protections we should have implemented years ago. Trusts for grandchildren charitable foundations, safeguards against future manipulation. We'd learned that wealth without wisdom was just tragedy waiting to happen. A month later, news broke of the Torelli trial. Bradley testified for 3 days, providing evidence that dismantled an empire of illegal gambling, loan sharking, and money laundering. 2 attempts were made on his life in prison. Both failed. He was placed in protective custody, adding isolation to his punishment. Martha finally wrote him after the trial. A short note. I saw your testimony on the news. Your father says you're finding your way back. I'm not ready to visit, but I'm ready to hope. Love, Mom. Jennifer remarried 3 years later to a good man who adopted Bradley's children with Bradley's blessing from prison. The kids visited their biological father quarterly, slowly rebuilding relationships. Bradley encouraged the adoption, saying they deserved a present father, not just a repentant one. Susan became an advocate for elder abuse awareness, using our story to help others recognize signs. Michael developed security software for seniors preventing digital exploitation. Both found purpose in our pain. 5 years after the trial, I received a call from the prison. Bradley had completed his bachelor's degree in counseling, graduated summa cum laude. He was working with gambling addicts, using his story as a cautionary tale. The warden said he was their most effective peer counselor. He talks about you often, the warden said, about disappointing you, making amends. He has 20 more years to work on that. Actually, Mr. Volkov, with good behavior and his cooperation in multiple federal cases, he could be eligible for supervised release in 10 years. Would you support that? I thought long and hard. Ask me in 10 years. Martha and I renewed our vows on our 50th anniversary. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends. Bradley sent a letter to be read aloud. Mom and Dad, 50 years of marriage is an achievement worth celebrating. That you're celebrating it despite my attempts to end it prematurely shows strength I can only aspire to. I'm not there in person, but I'm there in spirit, cheering for 50 more years. Your surviving son, Bradley. Martha cried. So did I. As I write this, Bradley has served 8 years. He's earned 2 degrees, counseled hundreds of addicts, testified in dozens of trials. The boy who built birdhouses with me is emerging from the man who tried to kill us. Recovery isn't forgiveness, but it's a start. We visit him together now, Martha and I. Awkward conversations becoming easier. He shows us photos of inmates he's helped get clean. We share pictures of grandchildren growing up without him. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does teach perspective. Our family survived because we refused to let Bradley's darkness define us. We could have collapsed, turned on each other, let bitterness poison what remained. Instead, we chose to rebuild stronger and wiser. The foundation Bradley tried to destroy became the bedrock of our renewal. The money he almost killed for it funds addiction treatment programs now. The houses he wanted to steal shelter abuse victims. His crime became our purpose, transforming tragedy into hope for others. Late at night, I sometimes hold the carved house Bradley made. Such precise work, such attention to detail. The same focus he used to plan our murders redirected toward creation instead of destruction. It gives me hope that people can change, even those who fall furthest. Martha keeps fresh flowers by our family photos. All our family photos. Because love doesn't mean accepting evil, but it does mean believing in redemption. Bradley has 17 years left to prove worthy of that belief. We have whatever time remains to see if he can. Some might say we're fools for maintaining any relationship with him. Maybe we are. But we're living fools who refused to let a sick man's desperate greed be our final chapter. We wrote a different ending, one where justice and mercy coexist, where surviving means more than just staying alive. Our son tried to kill us for money. We survived and used that money to save others from similar fates. That's our revenge, our justice, our redemption, not just his but ours. The wolf that woke to protect us has returned to rest. In its place stands an older, wiser couple who learned that the strongest foundations aren't built from concrete and steel, but from choosing love over bitterness, hope over despair, and justice tempered with mercy. Bradley will leave prison someday, an old man himself. What kind of world he enters will depend partly on the work he does now, partly on the family waiting for him. We're building that world daily, one careful choice at a time. It's the only legacy worth leaving, the only wealth that truly matters. To those reading this who face their own betrayals, who wonder how to survive when family becomes enemy, know this survival is possible. Justice can be served without destroying your soul. And sometimes, just sometimes, even the worst sins can become stepping stones to grace. We are Igor and Martha Volkov. We survived our son's attempt to murder us. We brought him to justice. And we're still here, still together, still believing that love is stronger than greed, and hope more powerful than despair. That's our story. May you never need its lessons, but if you do, may you find the strength to write your own ending. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you've faced similar betrayals or struggles with family members, please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help another person find their path to justice and healing. If this account resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over adversity. And if you know someone who needs to hear that survival and redemption are possible, please share this with them. Remember, you're stronger than you know, and you're never alone in your struggles. Until next time, hold your loved ones close, but keep your eyes open. Stay safe and stay strong.